Good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Beth Thornton. I'm the chairman of the Trumbull Town Council. And I'd like to call the meeting to order 7:32. We will have a moment of silence and then a pledge allegiance. So everyone, a moment of silence, and then we'll do our pledge. Thank you. Okay, everyone, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Dawn Cantafio.
Here.
Bill Mchugh. Bill Mchugh.
Bill, you're muted.
Here, can you hear me? Here.
Mike Miller.
Here.
Donna Siddell. I know I saw her. Mary Isaac.
Here.
Tony Cinto.
Here.
Keith Klain. Keith Klain.
Sorry, muted. Here.
Kevin Shively.
Here.
Thomas Whitmore.
Here.
Jason Marsh.
Here.
Mary Beth Thornton.
Here.
Carl Massaro.
Here.
Eric Paulson.
I'm here.
Lori Rosasco Schwartz.
Here.
Joanne Glasser Orenstein.
Here.
Steve Lemoyne.
Here.
Joe Garretts.
Here.
Bruce Elstein.
Here.
Joy Colon.
Here.
Ashley Gaudiano.
Here.
And Lisa Valente. Here.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum. Our next order of business is public comment, and we have quite a few people waiting to speak this evening. I just want to let everyone know there's a 3-minute limit during public comment. You may only speak to items that are currently on our agenda. And we look forward to hearing from all of you. And I spoke to the first selectman earlier this evening, and she requested that she be allowed to speak first. So we will first hear from First Selectman Vicky Tesoro.
Thank you, Chairman Thornton. Good evening, everybody. I hope everyone is well and your families are well. I'm going to speak first to, at this point of public comments about the charter revision resolution on our agenda. So I want to express my thanks to all the members of the Charter Revision Commission, in particular, Chairman Kate Donahue and Vice Chair Nancy Gardner. The process was both transparent and bipartisan in nature. Thanks also to those who worked with you, your clerk Cindy Katsky and Town Attorney Dan Shopik. Finally, a word of thanks to Bill Chin and the people at Trumbull Community Television who made working remote seem perfectly natural. From a process standpoint, the Charter Revision Commission worked long hours to create an initial set of recommendations. You listened to the public first by soliciting input, and then at your public hearings. You made changes based on that input. You listened to the recommendations of this council, both at the committee level and when you came before the full council. Once again, you made changes based on that input. I want to say for the record that I gave a series of recommendations at the outset of your work. Some were adopted and some were not. I respect the Commission's decisions in this regard and fully support all the recommendations in your final report. Let me speak to two specific proposals. The requirement for 2/3 of the council to change the number of voting districts and the changes you are recommending regarding the Board of Education. Changes in voting districts should not be taken lightly. That is why your recommendation is so important. Changes to the number of voting districts should have broad support among the public as reflected in the votes of the council members. The council retains the right to make changes. Requiring more than a bare majority of the council to do so is in the interests of the public as a whole. Regarding the Board of Education, for years our Board of Education was a 6-member board with no party holding more than 3 seats. The terms were staggered for 4 years, much like those we currently have on the Board of Finance. That balanced 6-person structure of the Board of Education worked. I felt it was a mistake to add a 7th seat, thereby injecting partisan politics into the process. I thought that mistake was compounded when terms were reduced from 4 years to 2 years, and all seats were up for election every 2 years. The Board of Education should be focused solely on the education needs of the community. They should be free to recommend those things they feel are necessary to maintain and improve our fine education system. Those recommendations should be as free as possible from political pressure. Similarly, compromise will be made easier with a balanced board. Again, I thank the Charter Revision Commission for your outstanding service. I urge the Town Council this evening to accept these changes. In so doing, you will give the voters the power to decide how the charter should be changed. Only the amendments approved by the voters on November 3rd will become effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you, First Selectman Tesoro. And now, Bill is going to have to help me with this because we have a lot of people and I can't see the whole list on my laptop. Let's see.
First speaker will be Julia McNamee.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Would you please state your name and your address for the record?
Hold on. Okay. My name is Julia McNamee, and I live at 256 Booth Hill Road in Trumbull. And I've lived here for 25 years. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I think I first heard about the reduction in the number of districts in Trumbull. It was when it occurred. I guess it was about 8 or 9 years ago. And I wasn't involved in politics or anything like that. I just read about it in the newspaper. And I was really angry when I heard about it because I had been reading about similar efforts at a national level where folks were making it more difficult for people to vote. And I really hold that part of democracy sacred, the idea that people should be able to vote. And I remember posting some things in some of the various social media at that time about it and, saying we should be making it easier for people to vote, not harder for people to vote. And I remember somebody saying, if you want to vote, you should be willing to do whatever you have to do to vote. And I agree with that, but I also think the job of government is to make it easy for people to vote. So when a couple of years ago, I found out that there was an effort to return to 7 districts, I really wanted to get involved. And I went out and collected a lot of signatures on petitions. And by this point, of course, I knew that this was a full out effort at the national level to make sure that some people's votes were not counted. I know that there are other reasons people in town favor a return to 7 districts, but for me, it is that fundamentally, it's important for us to make voting easier and not harder. When I talk to many people at Stop and Shop mainly, and if there's anybody watching, you probably saw me and another friend of mine who are out there many Saturdays. I talked to a lot of people. A few weren't sure if they supported it and wanted it as a referendum item because they wanted to research it further. But by far, most people thought that we should return to 7 districts because their experience was that the polling places were overcrowded and that it was more difficult to get to polling districts that weren't a local community level at their local elementary school or close by. And so, I felt so proud that we had collected the petitions, and I was very sorry that we were not able to put it on a referendum. I think today more than ever, we know that there are folks in our country even who are making it difficult for people to vote. And I think it's a precious right that we have. And I just would ask Town Council to please approve the return to 7 districts because I think it's important for us as a town to make it as easy as possible as we can for our residents to vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the
Next speaker, Carol Elstein.
Good evening. My name is Carol Elstein. I live at 90 Driftwood Lane. I grew up in Trumbull and I'm back since 2003. I'm going to read an edited version of my email. Dear members of the Trumbull Town Council, thank you for your service. Please return the town voting districts and hence polling stations back to 7 versus the current 4, which will increase minimum minority town council representation. When you do the math, you can see the positives. I'm no math scholar, but by going back to 7 districts, it means improving the minimum minority party representation from 19% to 33%, or from only 4 out of 21 members to 7 out of 21 members. Why is this important? In 4 districts, a minimum cohort of 4 minority members would have to share the responsibility of possibly more than 8 committees, which includes 5 permanent plus various ad hoc committees, and add to that an alternative. That sounds quite burdensome on one minority. Democracy requires compromise, not super majorities, and citizens deserve ease of access to polling stations. Just some bullet points on the downside of having 4 districts. Fewer polling locations. Voting has declined. Majority party prospect, 17 out of 21 or 81% supermajority potential. The majority party has 13 more individuals than the minority to share in committee responsibilities. This heavily burdens the potential minimum of only 4 minority council members, and supermajorities of any kind are never good. The upside to returning to 7 districts: increased number of polling stations and ease of voting. Hopefully, we increase the number of voters compared to the past establishment of 7 districts. Majority party prospect, 14 out of 21 or 67%. Improved minimum minority party prospect, 7 out of 21 or 33%. Improved representation of the minority party will allow an easier participation for the minority and not overtax the volunteers that we have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next person on our list.
Thank you. Next speaker, Michael Barker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you to the Town Council for giving us an opportunity to speak on this. I'll be brief since there are many people waiting to speak, and just say this issue is the reason that I got involved as a volunteer in Trumbull. I was one of those dopes hanging out with the signs in front of Town Hall, and it's just, it takes me back and gives me pause and makes me so grateful that we have activists in this town who are willing to take all the time that it takes and put all the effort in, even when roadblocks are thrown in our way, to get it done. And finally, if you're tuning in for the first time, 21 divided by 7 is 3. 21 divided by 4 is something with a remainder. So it's just not fair. Thank you so much for voting yes this evening, and thank you so much for considering this as town business.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. Next person on our list.
The next speaker, Lainey Mchugh. I'm not sure where she went. We'll call on somebody else. Christine L. Harris, I'll promote her to panelist.
Hey, good evening. Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you everyone at Town Council for taking all this time to listen to public comment. I am Christine L. Harris, and I reside at 4955 Madison Avenue, which puts me in District 3. So I'd really like to advocate for returning to the 7-district model because of what Mr. Barker actually just suggested, that it allows for equal representation, right? 7 dividing equally into 21, so that you could have equal sized districts. Similar to what Julia had mentioned as the first individual who spoke after Mrs. Tesoro spoke, I was similarly shocked as a resident when the shift or the change was made suddenly to 4 districts. I read about it in the paper as a constituent. I wasn't someone who had been really terribly involved in politics at the time. I moved to town in 2000, voted in several elections under the 7 district model, and it worked perfectly fine. It's been said or suggested, and looking back in history, that Trumbull did once, many decades ago, have 4 districts. But at that point in time, this community was an agrarian community with, perhaps under 10,000 or under 15,000 residents. Today, we're a very, very robust sized community with, an exponentially higher number of residents, as we all know. So I do believe that having the town council representation more accessible to the voters in their district, which is something that can happen when the districts are of smaller size. I ran for office in the last municipal election, running for town council. It was a wonderful experience, and I really enjoyed meeting voters. The tough part was realizing exactly how enormous my district really is, and the inability for me as a working parent, someone who worked full-time, had a 2-hour each way commute to my office, parental responsibilities for 2 young children in elementary school. It was just literally impossible for me to be able to knock on the majority of doors to meet folks who I might want to ask to vote for me and to learn about what their issues are. When we go back to 7 districts, we hope that you all will vote in favor of that this evening. It'll be much easier for candidates, whether they're incumbents or brand new candidates such as I was, to be able to reach out and get to know their neighbors in their district, because it really will be their own neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, Susan Shea.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, thank you to the town council for hearing all the public comment, and thank you all for your service. I just wanted to speak in support of going back to 7 districts. I was one of those people that was gathering signatures several years ago, and it's not so easy to gather 3,000 signatures. It takes a lot of time and effort, and a lot of good people put their effort in. And we got those signatures. And I too was very disappointed that it wasn't enough to make a referendum at that point. But I know the data shows that since Trumbull has gone back to 4 districts, voter turnout has been suppressed. And that's disturbing to me. And I think we can do better. And I think that, as other people have mentioned, it's a larger community now, more robust, and our hectic lifestyles are demanding on our time and our families, our jobs. And there's no reason we can't make it easier for people to vote, even if it's their responsibility, but it still doesn't have to be hard. So I just want to speak in support of, please support going back to 7 districts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Lainey Mchugh.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lainey Mchugh. I live at 132 Fresh Meadow Drive. I'm a 25-year resident of Trumbull, and I currently serve as your Board of Finance Chair. I'm speaking tonight in favor of both the resolutions concerning the return to 7 voting districts and charter revision. In regards to reestablishing 7 polling districts, I truly believe that it's important that we have equal representation among the districts. I really like 7 districts, 3 representatives. I think it gives you better continuity and allows for each area in town to have their voices heard better. I also believe in neighborhood polling places encouraging voter turnout, and most importantly, that it eliminates the supermajorities and allows for improved minority representation. So I would encourage you all to vote for changing back to 7 districts. In regards to charter revision, I just want to speak in support of the recommendation to change the Board of Education makeup and how it's seated. I really do support returning to an even numbered board to minimize partisan politics as far as the Board of Education. I believe there's a national trend to do this as well, and I've long been an advocate for this. As far as seating the Board of Education, I really encourage a return to 4-year staggered terms and an 8-member board. They have many committees that need to be taken care of. They meet more often than any other board in town. And I think it's imperative that they have that extra manpower in order, or woman power, in order to be able to do justice to their responsibilities. I also want you to consider that they really do control 2/3 of our municipal budget. Having that continuity with staggered terms, it eliminates having new members seated just before they vote on the budget. So again, I encourage you to consider that as you vote on charter revision this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comment? Person who's
The next speaker, Regina Haley.
okay.
Alt A. Okay, can you hear me? Question
Yes.
of the evening. Thank you so much. I'm Regina Haley. I reside at 48 Old Sawmill Road in Trumbull. I've been a Trumbull resident for about 18 years now. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. A few days ago, I emailed all of you the numbers associated with the move from 7 to 4 districts. In Trumbull, voter turnout rates have declined since the establishment of 4 voting districts. In addition to Trumbull having the highest allocation of registered voters per polling place in Fairfield County. I'd like to take this moment to respond to Mr. Block's comments last Saturday, alluding to residents not knowing what district they're in, how many districts there are, or in who fact represents them. Mr. Block, I agree. However, what I can tell you is that residents know where they vote, how long the drive is, if they left because they couldn't find a parking space, or how long they had to stand in line. If they were one of the original 3,000 that signed the petition, they might have paid attention to the fact that their signature was not recognized by the Republican supermajority controlled town council. And they might have been one of the voters that chose to flip the town council in the election shortly after their signatures were tossed aside. Whether or not they signed the petition, they might have had an awareness of the partisanship that affects this council. Frankly, I am absolutely flummoxed that the Republican town council members are fighting the opportunity to add 3 more Republican voices to the council. And I just have to wonder if that's because it's assumed that 7 districts is a Democratic concept. And somehow, I don't know, the Democrats are tricking us into something. That is entirely false. And in my opinion, it's this partisan rhetoric that is the true problem. I'd also like to respond to Mr. Sinto's concern at the potential of not finding 7 suitable polling places. Mr. Sinto, I agree with you. However, keep in mind that by voting against the change to 7 districts, you're removing all possibility. We have rallied as a town to make stuff happen before, and I remain optimistic in facing this challenge and am absolutely happy to volunteer to help in the effort of finding some suitable polling places. So voter turnout rates are down, polling places are crowded. I am asking all of you to please do something about it. The Trumbull Citizens for 7 District team tried to do something about it. We collected 3,000 signatures. And despite Mr. Block thinking any of us can do that, 3,000 is a lot. In my email to you on Friday, I challenged you to go out in your yard and pick 3,000 blades of grass. Or if you're more inclined, Mr. Block, you could write 3,000 letters to the editor, or drive 3,000 people to their polling place so that they don't need to find a parking space. The thing is, it's time to do something. And I genuinely hope that you choose a solution that benefits all of Trumbull's voters so that everyone has a voice, both at the polls and in the town council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker.
And the next speaker, Carla Volpe.
Hello, and again, I'm going to ask too, can you hear me? Thank you. My name is Carla Volpe, 143 Seal Road, that's District 4. Hello, everyone. Thank you to Chairwoman Thornton and the entire Town Council. I know you have a lot of people to hear tonight, so I'm going to keep mine short. I am here to speak in favor of returning to 7 voting districts. I support this proposal fervently. It is important to have a balance of both parties on our local boards and commissions. In our national politics, we can enter an echo chamber where we only hear from those that we want to, and we cannot let this happen in our local government. Returning Trumbull to 7 districts will not only give the minority party a larger voice in our local government, but also increase voter accessibility. I will always support making it easier for folks to participate in their government. Thank you for taking the time to consider and vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker, Cathy Champion.
Hi, my name is Cathy Champion. I live at 39 Undercliff Road in Trumbull. I've lived here for 14 years and I've had the opportunity to experience voting with both 7 and 4 districts, and I'm here speaking tonight to support returning back to 7 districts. There's been significant data shared these past few years and even tonight demonstrating there is a clear relationship between lower voter turnout and increased drive time to the polling location when we change to 4 districts. We should make it easier to vote, not harder. Currently, the 4-district model creates 1 super district, and I feel strongly that each district should have an equal amount of representatives. And additionally, returning to 7 districts will eliminate the possibility of a strong supermajority from any political party. I know I am so tired of the political tension happening now nationally, and I would like to think that things can be different here in Trumbull. I think it is a good thing for our community to reach out to the other side and work with one another with mutual respect. Now, on a personal note, I liked knowing that my local town councilman lived down the street from me when I first moved here. And although we didn't agree on national politics, I knew that he was open to hearing about any town complaint or recommendation that I had. Let's go back to what is right for Trumbull, and please vote to return to 7 districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next
And the
speaker.
next speaker, Mark Block.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the council. I'm Mark Block, 60 Ridgeview Avenue. In response to TC 28-93 to divide the town of Trumbull into 7 voting districts, no recent quantifiable data has been provided to indicate voters are supportive of a change in the current district model, regardless of what some have said anecdotally. A signed petition for a change to go backwards to a past ordinance is no less difficult to gather than an equal number of signatures for another change, whether it be at large members, 3 or 5 districts, or another form of representation. While it may have been a campaign pillar for someone running for office, producing factual quantitative data to indicate it is of voters' interests should drive the decision on a change in representation. Have you as council members pinpointed with any accuracy the number of council members that residents know Trumbull has today, the number of districts, which district they reside in, who they are? I'm going to guess that probably that hasn't occurred. You will in fact be rubber stamping those who believe in establishing a super minority who can in effect thwart the express will of the voters by eliminating and thereby suppressing their right to choose their representatives. Why? Because a super minority will occur when you have so constrained the voters' choice by reducing the majority. You will have thus disallowed and impeded the voters' choice. Again, the voters' right to choose will be suppressed. What you will no doubt approve without voter intent is the allowance of enough council seats specifically intended to prevent the governance by either party of a potential 2/3 majority to pass legislation the town charter requires a supermajority to do. By doing so, you will have created that super minority representation. You have discounted the current representative model. You have discounted proportional representation to guarantee minority representation. You have taken the stance that promotes minority representation by capping the number of seats a party can win in an election. The practice of limited nominations. Like limited voting, this does prevent one voting bloc from gaining total control of an elected body at the expense of the minority party. The purpose of this statute is to include a minority perspective in ideas to decision making. However, you are choosing to excessively exceed the statute by disallowing the voters the opportunity to elect enough representatives to enact their will on the issues requiring a large majority. You are exceeding the minority representation intent that is not a statute, thus suppressing the will of the voters. Under current town representation, the minority voice not only exists, but has the potential to be significant upon the voters' will. It has not been silenced, it flourishes. It has been directed to both parties to convince the voters to elect them. The motivation behind this initially intended ballot charter question has now come back to you as the body with sole discretion to change district lines. It is not about polling locations, it's not about polling lines, it's not about driving distance, it's not about district makeup. Equal representation of residents is already achieved through the current districts where the district lines themselves are equal in size. Your expected overreach should not occur without the voters' involvement. They must have the ultimate say in their representation, not through a politically motivated one-party ordinance that increases what is already guaranteed, which is minority representation. The minority's voice in either party is loud enough today for the voters to hear. You must not license it through a super minority. It is not necessary, it is not required by statute, it's suppressive, and it's not good governance when you thwart the voters' will. I strongly urge the full council in a strong and bipartisan manner to unequivocally reject this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, please.
Thank you, Joe Pifko. Joe, we're unable to hear you. You're unmuted, but something's wrong with your microphone.
How's that?
Better, thank you.
Okay. First of all, thank you to all the town council members. I know how much hard work and hours, long hours you put into committing to the town, and we all appreciate your service. Thank you for that service. And thank you for all the passionate speakers tonight. And I think there's one thing we can all agree on, and that is the more involvement you have in local government, the better government you have. One credo I always live by is that you don't know what you don't know. And what we don't know is what the 2020 census is going to produce. We have an enormous number of apartments being built in this town that are going to affect the demographics significantly. We have an exodus from New York City that we've never seen before, and from New York State that we've never seen before into Connecticut. And that is also going to change the demographics significantly. I don't understand what the rush is. I really think that we need to sit back and wait and see what the census produces. There's a reason why our founding fathers required us to have a census every 10 years, so that we know where we stand and where we are at this point in time. I urge you to hold off and not vote on this until you can make a reasonable decision, correct information. Thank you.
Our next speaker, please.
Speaker Marilyn Moore.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, good evening. I'm Marilyn Lord. I live at 62 Driftwood Lane, District 4. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I was also a person gathering those signatures a few years ago. I'd like to encourage support for returning to the 7 districts. I have lived in Trumbull for 28 years and have experienced both the 7 districts and the 4 districts, having changed my polling place from Madison Middle School, which is a short, even half-mile walk, to Middlebrook Elementary, which is a 3.2-mile distance or a 7-minute drive. That's not onerous, but just wanted to put it there. I believe that the time that the town council worked best was when there was a 10-11 party split. I think that was in the 1990s. Both parties had a voice, and on some occasions, members crossed over to vote with the other party on various issues. In my mind, there are 3 main reasons for returning to 7 districts. 1, creating a reasonable minimum number of minority party representation that is for either party. 2, having smaller neighborhood districts. And 3, the majority of people in town will be closer to their polling place. So number 1, I do believe a strong democracy allows for a minority representation to be voiced and heard. When you have a 7-district arrangement with a minority rep for each district, It means that the minority party is guaranteed at least 7 members. This ensures that the minority party will have enough people to cover all the committee assignments. My husband, Jim Meisner, served on the Trumbull Town Council from 2010 to 2013, having been a part of a 7-member minority representation. He felt that this was the minimum number in order for all the committees to have a meaningful minority voice. With 7 districts, you have smaller neighborhood districts. This means that you will have 3 representatives serving you. I believe that with a smaller number, you are more likely to know your representatives. Just doing a little survey of some of my neighbors and friends, many of them did not know how many reps they had and who they were. I still don't know all of my reps. Making smaller districts makes government more personable and neighborly. With smaller district size, the majority of people will be closer to their polling place. I hope that we can design the district so that is the case, and that the majority of people will feel that voting will not be onerous or a hassle because they have to travel far, as some seniors may feel, or wait in long lines, as I did at Middlebrook back in 2013. Government should make voting easy and accessible so that the majority of voters feel engaged and want to participate. And the only other thing I'd like to add is, and I mentioned this to Sujata the other day, was because we have one district that is a majority, that is a super majority, or super district, because it has 6 representatives, and the one I live in. Let's say that there was an issue that affected District 4 and perhaps an adjoining district like District 1. And it didn't bother the rest of the districts on the other side of town. So now you have an automatic majority because you have 6 and 5 and you have 11. So that they're going to win that issue, even if it doesn't affect the other 2 districts. So anyway, that's just one point that I don't think we should have a super district. So anyway, thank you so much for allowing me to talk, and thank you for serving.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Sure, the next speaker, Roy Fuchs.
Good evening. My name is Roy Fuchs. I reside at 221 Fitch's Pass, and I've been a Trumbull resident for 15 years. I'd like to add a little bit of historical perspective to this, because at the time I was reporting for Trumbull Patch, and I was one of the fewer than perhaps 12 people who sat in on all the meetings. And what we witnessed was an attempt by the Republicans, chiefly the then Republican Registrar, Bill Holden, to throw us back to the days from 7 districts to the 4 in order to accumulate power for his party. It was a blatant power play. There was never an attempt to discuss with the Democrats. There was a 5-person committee, 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats, one of whom was Mr. Sorrell. And the whole deal was railroaded through. So I would suggest that we learn a lesson, that we go back to 7 districts. And the issue, the motivating issue, was that we had run afoul of 1 person, 1 vote, because not all the districts were equal size. Richard White, who is our GIS expert, created a map that moved a few houses around, a few families around, and brought us into alignment. But his plan was barely even looked at. That you've seen people read more off a window shade that gets pulled up or yanked up than the time that was spent by the Republicans doing that. And I would add, if you're interested in the history, you can Google 4 words that will get you some information. Roy Fuchs, redistricting, patch. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, please.
So the next speaker, Tim Cantafio, he's coming in. Mr. Cantafio, you're the next speaker.
Thanks for, Madam Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. And thanks for the Charter Revision Commission and the Town Council for spending all your time and efforts here. I wanted to briefly touch base on the redistricting thing. I think the increasing the polling places is going to make it much easier for people to access voting, and it's going to decrease the amount of time in the voting queue. I'm strongly in favor of this resolution, and hopefully this will help increase the voter turnout in future elections as well. So I hope the Town Council approves this resolution, and again, thanks for having me this evening. I'm at 72 Tate Road. I've been a resident of Trumbull for over 50 years. I raised my kids here. I still live here. It's a wonderful town, and thanks again for everything. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker, Marshall Marcus.
Thank you.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman and fellow council members. I'd like to speak in favor of returning to 7 districts. I sent a letter to the council this weekend because I didn't know if I'd be on tonight. Number 1, I live at 91 Stonehouse Road in District 3. I was in the old District 3 and voted right here on Stonehouse Road at Tashoe School. In 2015, I ran for town council in the new enlarged District 3. It was impossible to meet my neighbors and door knock an entire district. We don't get a chance to meet our constituents or hopeful constituents. Since the change to the 4 districts, I have never once had a candidate for town council knock at our door where we had 5 registered voters. Not once. In 2018, I served as Assistant Registrar of Voters at District 2 at St. Joseph's High School in a day that was torrential rainfall. There were many voters who lived in the southern end of Trumbull along Old Town Road who had to trek in the rain to the extreme northern edge on the Shelton border. But there were also many voters who I know who didn't come. These are people who live both in Royce in apartments or other areas who chose to live in that neighborhood because it is served by public transportation. But you can't use public transportation to get to the polls. They have been disenfranchised by the gerrymandering of our districts. There was a question about suitable polling places. Well, St. Joseph's High School is not a suitable polling place. It does not have the required backup generators that the Secretary of State requires for it to be a polling place. Furthermore, public voting should not take place in a religious institution. We can come up with 7 voting places in this town. It's not an issue. I object to one district having an extra vote. There may be money that is allocated in their favor as opposed to the other districts because of that one vote. I'm not saying it has happened, but it can happen. And that's not equal representation for all residents of Trumbull. I ask you to vote to return to sanity and our 7-district system. Thank you.
Thanks, Speaker Ray Baldwin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ray Baldwin. I live at 700 Booth Hill Road in Trumbull. I've been a resident of the town of Trumbull for over 70 years. Over the past 50 years, I've worked for 8 administrations, both Democrat and Republican. And the one thing I admired most, the real strength of our town and our government has always been centered around minority representation. Historically, the pendulum swings back and forth. Today we have a Democratic administration. In a few years that could all change. It's the nature of politics. But as long as there is a strong minority voice, there will always be an effective checks and balances in our town. It's what sets us apart from many other communities and what keeps us on the straight and narrow. Normally a first selectman or party that receives the kind of mandate Vicky DeSoro received in our last election would use it to push her agenda forward and roll over any political opposition. Recent history has certainly shown that to be the case. But instead, First Selectman Tesoro has chosen to do the right thing and return our town government to all the people of Trumbull, regardless of political affiliation, and restored the 7 voting districts. Convenient access to the polls in all areas of town will certainly cut down on long waits on election days, but more importantly, it will ensure that every part of town will receive effective representation. I ask that you please support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the next speaker, Richard Deakin.
Hello, am I good?
Yes.
Excellent. Chair and members of the council, my name is Rich Deakin, residing at 679 Garden Street, and former chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My comments on the proposed change to 7 districts will address one specific concern that has been stated by several individuals. They have expressed a concern that the current town council districts are too large for council candidates to effectively reach their constituents. While door-to-door canvassing is certainly a challenge, currently each council candidate must only knock on approximately 1/4 of the households in town. I speak on this from extensive experience canvassing as a candidate. Townwide candidates must reach the entire town and appear to do so effectively. I've been a candidate in Trumbull 6 times, both in victory and in defeat. When I ran for the state senate, the 22nd district was far larger than just Trumbull, and I was still able to personally reach several thousand homes. Locally and townwide elections for the zoning commission, I know that both my running mates, my opponents, and myself have been able to reach a large number of homes in town. I trust that any candidate who intends to win will do the same. Candidates for town council have the same responsibilities for providing quality constituent services as members of any other town board or commission. It is not unreasonable to ask councilmen to cover 1/4 of the town. It is a very reasonable area to cover. In the end, councilmen vote on matters that affect the entire town, not just their district. I cannot recall a town council vote that has ever went straight along district line. If you vote against 4 districts, don't let it be because councilmen don't wish to walk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, the list is completed.
Oh, thank you very much. So that concludes our public comment. Thank you, everyone who came forward and spoke. We really appreciate it. It's always good to hear from our constituents, and everyone spoke very well tonight. Thank you. Our next order of business is approval of our minutes. May I have a motion?
Don Cantafio, so moved.
Joan Glasser, second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or any amendment that anyone would like to make to the minutes? All right, hearing none. I'll call it to a vote. All in favor? Do we need to make this a roll call vote, or can we look for unanimous? The clerk. We have Councilman Massaro.
Unanimous consent is fine if there's no objection.
Okay. Unanimous consent?
Do you need a motion for unanimous consent, Madam
No, you
Chairman?
have to vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe there's unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent. Thank you, Councilman Massaro. Okay. All right, so we have a discussion item this evening, I'm very happy to say. The Booth Hill Jane Ryan Building Committee final update. We have finally concluded their business. The windows are in the schools, and we just saw Chairman Deakin, and I'd like to bring him back. He's had something to say regarding this.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Rich Deakin, living at 679 Garden Street. I think that's where the script ends. Okay, so I'm here on behalf of the Booth Hill and Jane Ryan Elementary Schools Window Construction Building Committee. A little too long to have an effective acronym. The punch lists are completely done per Mr. Bova. The reimbursement, I cannot speak to the status of the reimbursement as that is in the hands of the state at this time. However, it is assumed that the reimbursement from the state will be coming to us as soon as they process it. But again, according to Mr. Bova, who contacted the relevant officials, I am pleased to announce that all of the windows are complete, all the punch lists are done, and despite the fact that this committee has been around since, I believe, 2017 or 18, and someone conned me into being the chairman. I am pleased to request our disbandment. And that concludes my presentation, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chairman Deakin. We are so pleased that this project's completed. It took a little longer than anyone anticipated, but I am pleased to know that it's completed. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Chairman Deakin regarding this project? All right, hearing none. Thank you so much. Thank you for your service, and please thank everyone on your committee. We appreciate the hard work.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. All right, on to our resolutions. We have 6 this evening. I would like Councilman Paulson to bring resolution TC 28-89 to the floor for us, please.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Resolution TC 28-89, be it resolved that the Town Council of the Town of Trumbull hereby approves, as amended, proposals for a revision of the charter of the town as provided and permitted by the Connecticut General Statutes, Section 7-191, and the Charter of the Town of Trumbull. And be it further resolved that the questions of having a general charter revision shall be submitted to the electors of the Town of Trumbull for adoption or rejection at the state and federal election scheduled for the 3rd day of November 2020. And be it further resolved that the town clerk is hereby authorized and directed to give such notice as required by law of such ballot questions at the state and federal election of the registration of electors entitled to participate therein.
Thank you very much. May I have a second with your name, please?
Bruce Elstein, second.
Thank you. Committee report, please.
Certainly. The chair explained the L&A committee had met with the Charter Revision Commission on Wednesday, July 22nd, 2020, and heard their revisions on the final report. Attorney Shofik explained there had been a few minor changes made after the July 22nd, 2020 meeting. The clerk noted the final report was distributed today. Ms. Donahue, chairman of the Charter Revision Commission, explained the only item added after July 22nd, 2020 was done based on Councilman Lemoyne's suggestion at the end of that meeting to add a line to the Commission on Aging that was in the Youth Commission. That was the only addition beyond the list sent. By unanimous consent, the L&A committee passed the resolution without recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councilman Marsh. And now we will have discussion, if there is discussion regarding this resolution. It's awfully quiet. There's no discussion.
Raise my hand.
I'm sorry. Okay, Chairman Donahue.
I didn't know if you wanted me to go back through the 8 items that the town council asked us to review at the last meeting.
All right, I'll leave that up to the council. Council, would you like a review of the 8 items that were in question?
This is Tony Cinto. I have a question. Are we voting on the resolution or on the questions?
We are currently voting on the resolution. Well, actually not voting. We are discussing it. We're in discussion. Would anyone like Chairman Donahue to give an explanation or review of the changes that were made?
Yes, I would.
Sorrow, I see your hand. Thank you.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. So at the last meeting, council sent us back to reconsider 8 different items, and then we added the 9th one, Mr. Lemoyne's request. So I'm going to run through these in the order that they appear in the charter. The first is Chapter 2, Section 2. You'll find this on the charter, page 3, and our report, page 5. This was about how the number of districts in town could be changed. The idea was floated that the number of districts could be changed by a vote of not less than 2/3 of the members of the town council. We made the changes the council requested, and the language we're proposing is the number of voting districts in the town shall be established from time to time upon the affirmative vote of 2/3 of the members of the council present at a meeting duly warned for such purpose. Voting districts so established shall consist of substantially equal population. The boundaries of voting districts in the town shall be set from time to time by a majority vote of the council. The second item you asked us to look at was Chapter 2, Section 5A. And this was consideration. We had considered taking newspaper posting out of a number of places in the charter, and you wanted us to reflect more on that. So in the end, all we did was add posting on the website to any place that we were also publishing in the newspaper. So we took your recommendation on that one. Third requested review was Chapter 2, Section 5B. This was a request to change the posting timing. We had recommended going 24 hours to align with FOI, and you requested we push it back to 48 hours, which we did. Next one was Chapter 2, Section 6. There was some discussion about what the meaning of immediately upon posting on the town website meant. So we clarified that as follows. And this is adoption of legislation that we're talking about. The 15-day period shall not apply to appointments made of members of boards, commissions, and committees. Such appointments shall become effective immediately upon posting notice of the appointment in the legal notices section of the town website. The next one, the fifth one was Chapter 3, Section 3. This is executive branch and the section on absence, disability, vacancy. And there was some discussion about, well, what if the treasurer has to be replaced? And as we looked at it, we realized that that was addressed in another part of the charter, Chapter 7, Section 5, Chapter 8, Section 5. So we feel like that issue has been resolved, and we actually added that to the reasoning in that section to make it a little easier to understand. The sixth area was, let's see, Chapter 7, Section 1A. This was the boards and commissions chapter, Board of Finance in particular, and we were talking about alternate members of the Board of Finance. And we had included language that said 1 Democrat and 1 Republican. You guys asked us to see if there was another way to say this. We looked at a lot of different wording variations, options, and we finally decided to throw it back to you guys. You can address this via an ordinance. We could not come up with a way that we thought held water and was not going to just bubble up a bunch of other issues. So the language stays as it is. So it is not a change that we're proposing to make to the charter. The seventh item you asked us to look at was the Chapter 7, Section 17 on the Ethics Commission. Okay, so this is there've been a lot of back and forth on this one. So after we considered it again, we looked at the letters, the public hearings, all the comments that both the commission and the council have received, and we have decided to abandon a number of the proposed revisions to this section of the charter. Among the things we abandoned are inclusion of a materiality threshold for ethical violations, discretionary referral of criminal matters to appropriate authorities, and creation of a discretionary right to dismiss any matters in which a respondent is not afforded an opportunity to cross-examine the plaintiff and witnesses against the respondent. While we strongly favor the concept of materiality and discretionary right to dismiss, we believe such matters are better suited to be held in the Code of Ethics itself. And we really urge the council to take a look at the Code of Ethics. It has not been revised since 1989. And that would really be the appropriate place to lay out all of these procedures. In addition, we restored certain procedural rules that we had proposed to take out, specifically Section 17D, clauses Romanet 1 through 4. The restoration of these provisions, some of which are contained in the code, we believe ensures that the rules which deal with fundamental rights of due process survive subsequent changes to the code. And the one other change we made was in restoring clause Romanet 2 of Section 17D, we eliminated current language that provides the respondent with an option of having a public or private hearing of the charges against him or her under applicable law, such hearings must be public. And then finally, you asked us, spend a little bit of time talking about Chapter 8, Section 9, the section on bonded debt. As you may recall, this section was added in the 2011 charter revision and requires a referendum vote for all debt taken out exceeding 15 million for a project. However, there was no procedural framework included to guide the town in how to do a referendum. So we're recommending that a procedure for holding a referendum, and we're suggesting that the index be indexed based on the CPI annually. We do propose that you separate those two things out. We think the procedural language should just be part of the overall charter revision update, and that the CPI question be separated out as a separate ballot question. Is that clear? And then the last thing we did was we added a sentence to the Commission on Aging regarding them acting as an advocate for senior programs and expenditures before the Board of Finance and Town Council, which is mirrored in the Commission on Youth as Mr. Lemoyne requested.
Okay, thank you very much. Discussion, questions? Councilman Massaro again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to thank the Charter Revision Commission for their long work reviewing the charter. The great many proposals that were considered and went by the board. And I think for the most part, it's probably a good choice to do that. I come from the vantage point that I like the electorate to speak loudly and at every opportunity. And I think that a lot of the proposed changes restrict that. Some of the notice periods are reduced. Specifically the Board of Ed change. And while I can appreciate some of the reasons for wanting to change terms and things of that nature, this is really a backward step in my view. I think the Board of Ed, no matter what the composition, the number of membership, always serves the interests of the education of our students very well. No matter which party is in the majority, they do good things for the town and the education district. Going back to 6, it really takes away the people's choice. At the end of the day, on the ballot will be 6 candidates, 3 from each major party, and they'll all get elected. The voters will have no choice to choose among 6 candidates in this scenario. 4-year terms staggered. I understand the purpose. It's a tough job there, but I've said at earlier council meetings this year on this subject that town council bears as much responsibility as anybody in town, including the Board of Ed, if not more. So I'm really not in favor of that change. To me, it's a backward move to a 6-member commission. You have strong leadership in the superintendent's chair, and 6, 7, 8, 9 dedicated members on the Board of Education. You do well. Parents in town, teachers, the administrators, they all rally for the best interests of the student, no matter what the composition of the board is. I don't really favor going backward there. I think it takes the people's choice away. The second item I wanted to speak to is in Chapter 2, and it has to do with the change in, let me just pull it up in a second, section.
Excuse me, Councilman Massaro, before you go on, I think Chairman Donahue had her hand raised to remark.
I just want to clarify one thing. We are recommending going to 8 Board of Ed seats, not 6.
Okay.
Okay,
I stand corrected on the number.
I think you know that. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, but an even number, again, takes away people's choice. There'll be 4 candidates from each party, and they're all going to get elected. even in the staggered scenario. So let me go back to chapter 2, where I would like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to remove these proposed change in chapter 2, section 2, under composition and election. And this has to do with the number of voting districts to be established from time to time by the affirmative vote of 2/3 of the members of the council. The rest of the language, I think, is pretty consistent with the old language. And the reason I want to make that change is because I think people really need to understand how municipal districts are shaped and how they're supposed to be shaped under Connecticut General Statutes 9-169. State of Connecticut in that statute asks municipalities to establish their municipal voting districts by having those boundary lines conform to existing state Senate, congressional lines, and state assembly districts. Trumbull doesn't have to worry at the present time about congressional district or state Senate district because the entire town rests within each of those districts, so we don't have any split votes. We do have 3 different General Assembly districts, and over the many years, some of which have been around, and some of you have been around that long, we've had a couple of polling places where we've had to have what we call split districts. Years when state offices are elected, for instance, down in District 2 and the old District 7, they were split, where some of the people going to the polling place were going to vote for one state assembly seat and others were not. And that happened there in 2 and 7, and it also happened in old Districts 4 and 5. So when the 4-district model was adopted back in 2012, the concept there was to have one split district only, which was out of necessity because of the few number of residents lying within the 122nd senatorial district, which was largely in Stratford and Shelton, and just a little piece of Nichols. The super district, so-called District 4, was fully encompassed the 134th state assembly seat. And that's why there 4 districts were proposed to eliminate one of the 2 split districts. Fast forwarding, we don't know what the future holds. We do know that census occurs every 10 years. State of Connecticut is mandated, as is the federal government, to adjust the boundary lines of its congressional districts, Senate districts, and state assembly districts. We don't know what impact that could have in the town of Trumbull. Over the years, there hasn't been too much, but there has been changes down in the Nichols area with the 122nd and the 123rd. So when those changes occur, requiring a council to vote for 2/3 by a 2/3 majority to change the boundary lines of the municipal districts, I can foresee difficult in garnering 14 votes if you do not have one party in 14 seats of the council. So the fear may be that every time the majority changes on the council, that there'll be a move to change the districts. Since we are elected 2 years for 2-year terms only, historically, you've never seen that done. And the reason you don't see it done is because there isn't any reliable data until the census is completed, published, and municipalities can rely on it. Additionally, this year, when this census is released, state of Connecticut will go through its exercise, as will the congressional seats, and there will be some shifting of some of the boundary lines. We again should take a wait and see approach as to what those numbers are and bear out. We're going to have to do that regardless of whether we pass the district resolution later tonight or not. It's going to have to be looked at again. So again, my position is my motion is to remove this language to require the 2/3 vote. I don't think it's necessary. And will actually give the minority party at the time to control whether redistricting occurs or not. And government is majority rule, not minority rule.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Massaro. And I see Chairman Donahue again would like to remark.
Again, just for clarification, what we're proposing is that the 2/3 vote of the town council is for the number of districts of the town council. The resetting of the boundaries is a majority, would be a majority vote of the town council. Two different things.
Right, I acknowledge that, and I see that clearly. However, the number of districts can be just as important as the boundary lines of any districts once all the state assembly, senate, and congressional and district lines are changed. So I made a motion. If there's a second, we can continue discussion.
I'd like to second Councilman Massaro's motion.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Schwartz, motion on the floor.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
so disregarding all the other comments that were made that don't really have any direct effect on the actual charter revision, I want to just focus on the part that does and the 2/3 majority. One of the things I'm not sure I understand from Mr. Massaro's argument is how giving more power to a majority is going to be beneficial to the entire town, given the makeup of the entire town and how balanced it is between different parties and unaffiliated voters. I don't understand that logic of how that actually helps. I mean, I think that if people are concerned, and I think people generally are in the country, across the country, concerned with any potential hint of gerrymandering, and I'm not saying that there would be any gerrymandering, but even any hint of gerrymandering, then making sure that it's not so easy and not so simple to just change the number of districts at any given moment on the whims of any power or any party that comes into power seems to be much more of a widespread benefit than elsewise. So I'm not sure I understand the logic of that argument.
Well, the logic of the argument is not about gerrymandering, because I don't consider doing that. I consider following the statute, which are the guidelines. When you follow those guidelines, you're taking away confusion from the voters. When you have split districts, you have people walking into the wrong polling place to go vote. If you've been around long enough to know that there were the 4 split districts, you'd understand that. Even today, without split districts, except down in District 2, you still have people sometimes showing up at the wrong polling place.
With all due respect, through the chair, Mr. Massaro, we have 4 districts and we have split districts. This isn't going to change that. So I don't understand making that argument against making changes. It doesn't seem to equate for me, and that's where I'm having a hard time following your logic.
Well, I don't think I can say it any other way, but we've had this type of discussion before. I'm just looking not to handcuff any future council in their ability to change the number of districts if it is so needed or becomes necessary based on boundary line changes under the state statute. That's all. Again, it's just impractical to think that one party will get a majority of the council seats one year and decide to have a whole different electoral cycle, a different design for districts, only to have it change 2 years later, 4 years later, 6 years later. It's not the point. The point of changing your districts is to do it when you have valid census data to rely on, set them, because no boundary lines change with the state or Congress except every 10 years. And in my experience living in Trumbull for 28 years, I don't know any town that redistricts unless they see a significant population shift within districts, and they change lines.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Marsh.
Thank you. Through the chair, just in response, the argument that I'm hearing is that the council might be handcuffed if state statute required a change in voting districts based on new data or redistricting of congressional lines. Frankly, I think having this provision would force the council to work together, because assuming that there's town council or the town attorney would advise the council that they can't violate state statute, there would have to be a compromise to arrive at a district that complies with the statute. So I don't necessarily subscribe to the argument that somehow without lessening the supermajority requirement on this vote, that there's going to be a rogue council that's going to violate or set up districts in derogation of state law. And as to the census data, I agree that having census data would be useful, but the 2020 census has been delayed due to COVID, and even with a normal census, we probably wouldn't receive the actual numbers for 2, maybe 3 years from now. So there is no numbers coming around the corner on the census data. It takes time to obviously interpret those and distill those into useful information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I would,
Chair, can we call the question?
why would you cut off debate? This is a very important topic this evening.
I would second the motion to call the question.
All right, motion to call the question has been seconded. Maybe we have a roll call vote?
Don Cantafio,
Yes.
Bill Mecca,
Yes.
Point of order, Madam Chair, what are we voting on? The motion to call the question?
Yes.
Aren't we voting on the suggested amendment?
No.
We're voting to end debate on Mr. Massaro's.
You need an affirmative vote to end debate. So we
So
are
we're
voting
voting
on
on-
calling the question.
Question. That's correct.
shall I proceed or should I start over?
I would start over, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Don Cantafio,
Yes.
Bill Mecca,
Yes.
Michael Miller,
Yes.
Donna Sidell. Donna Sidell. I'll come back to her. Mary Isaac,
Yes.
Tony Sinto,
No.
Keith Klein,
No.
Kevin Shively,
Yes.
Thomas Whitmore,
Yes.
Jason Marsh,
No.
Carl Massaro,
No.
Eric Paulson,
No.
Lori Rosasco Schwartz,
No.
Joanne Glasser Orenstein. Joanne, you're muted. I can't hear you, Joanne. Can somebody help? I'll come back to her. I can't hear. Steve Lemoyne,
No.
Joe Garrix,
Yes.
Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
Joy Cologne,
Yes.
Ashley Gaudiano,
No.
Lisa Valente,
No.
Donna Sidell. Is she here?
No.
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 Thank you,
No.
Donna. And our other person we were coming back to was Joanne Glasser Orenstein.
I think she got booted and is trying to rejoin.
Okay, so maybe we'll put her down as not voting.
Yeah, she's not back in. She had said she was out and trying to come back in.
Okay. Shall I put her down as not voting? Anybody want to confirm?
Well, I think she made the motion to call the question. I think she wants to vote.
Maybe give her one more minute.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, this is Dan Chopik. How many votes in the affirmative do you have right now?
10.
10. Well, this motion's going to fail. You need 2/3 vote.
Hey, Bill, she's having a hard time getting back in for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I just resent her
Okay.
invitation.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is going to fail either way.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion fails. So we'll continue discussion on Councilman Massaro's motion to remove the two-thirds language.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just respond to Councilman Marsh's remark about worrying about a rogue council to change districts. If you weren't worried about it, you wouldn't have a 2/3 requirement to change the number of districts. So obviously there's concern about it.
Chair,
And Marsh?
through the chair, just in response to Mr. Massaro, I think the council feels that changing voting districts should be done with much forethought and in consultation with all members of the council, which is why we've proposed the 2/3 limitation. So it's not the will of a few, but it is the act of the council as a body.
All right. Councilman Kling.
Just further to Councilman Marsh's point through the chair, will we be waiting to vote on the redistricting on proposed tonight, the resolution tonight, until the 2/3 rule is in place for the charter revision, or will we be using the majority vote tonight?
Councilman Marsh?
We are voting as the rules are in place today, so that would mean a majority vote would carry that resolution.
So it's not important enough to wait to change for the change?
And through the chair, I would say that we as a majority have tried on numerous occasions to put this actually to the voters to decide, and the Republicans have blocked that on 2 occasions. We attempted through the committee for 7 districts, or the group for 7 districts with 3,000 signatures to get on the ballot. That actually went to court, and the Republicans fought to keep that off the ballot, successfully so. And we attempted to introduce a charter resolution that would also put it to the voters. And Mr. Massaro aptly brought up the controlling precedent of Haley versus Massaro. So the rules have been laid out for us on this matter, and we're playing out the rules as they stand. So play it as it lies, like golf.
Mary Beth, this is Tony Cinto.
Yes, Councilman Cinto.
Then if it's so important, let's make it a separate question. Make it a separate question on the ballot. Let the people vote for it. Let's see what they say. If everybody wants to do this, you want to do it correctly, make it a separate question.
Through the chair,
I'm going to make a motion to make it a separate question.
Understood, Mr. Cinto. Before you make your motion, though, we did consider that, but Mr. Massaro was adamant that the town council through section 9-169 is the sole body to determine the number and design of voting districts. We went to court for that. So to put it on the charter, I would say is a derogation of that statute and the case law that interprets that.
Madam Chair, we have a motion on the floor right now. Is there any other debate?
Councilman Massaro.
Yeah, I just want to say that the statute 9-169 controls. That was the court's ruling. That was my ruling as former council chair when the petition was presented, and that's the way it's supposed to be done. What will occur tonight is that the council will, under the ordinance proposal later on the agenda, determine the number and boundary lines of districts. If this amendment is voted down and the charter revision goes to the ballot and it is passed, then future council will only be able to change the number of districts by a 2/3 vote. I'm not sure 9-169 talks about anything like a 2/3 majority vote of a legislative body like it does in other statutes. Again, I don't think this is necessary. And that's really all I have to say about it.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Massaro.
This is Tony. I have a question for Mr. Marsh. Aren't the people voting if it's hidden in the potpourri question for the change anyway?
I don't necessarily agree with your characterization that anything is hidden.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me rephrase it then. The question is lumped in with a bunch of changes. May they be clerical, may they be, general corrections from before, whatever it is. Aren't they still voting for it?
They are voting for a change on the manner in which voting districts may be changed. They are not voting on anything to do with who has the authority to make that change. We are within the bounds of 9-169, and we're in the bounds of that statute as it's been interpreted by the court.
Okay, but they're still voting for something, correct?
They are voting to determine that in the future, a 2/3 majority of the council is required to change the number of voting districts.
So they're still voting for it, correct?
They are voting for a charter amendment that says that, yes, you are correct.
Okay, further discussion?
Just one last word. Again, as I just mentioned, if this amendment fails and the charter revision proposal goes to the ballot and is passed, this will virtually lock in a 7-district design for municipal voting in Trumbull.
Unless 2/3 of the council decides to change it, which requires a bipartisan effort, which I'm all in favor of, by the way.
Except for tonight.
Right. Except tonight, right.
No, every night.
Madam Chair, this is Kevin Champion. I don't understand those last comments, and I don't believe that they were appropriate.
It's all right. Do we have any further discussion? Councilman Mchugh?
Yeah, thank you. So having listened to the public hearing and some of the dialogue here, I'm ready to vote for this and move to the 7 because like one of our constituents had said, before I was elected and this involved.
Mr. Mchugh, could you speak up? At least I'm having trouble hearing you.
That's, my kids would say that's unusual. I talk so loud, but can you hear me now clearly? Okay, cool. So what I was saying was, I'm not going to say too much different what had been said already by constituents during public hearing and then some of the dialogue. But this has been studied for a couple of years. When Mrs. Haley in particular addressed us, she's done a lot of work for several years and collected a lot of support from people to bring this issue up. So it's been there for a long time. And I think practically speaking, as a 3rd-term councilman, traversing District 1 is one of the most difficult. Too much technology here. Can you guys hear me? Shoot.
We hear you.
Sorry. That's never happened before. I apologize. So what I was saying, and I'll finish with, traversing that district is such a challenge because of its size, but also it's a district that services 3 different elementary schools. And the biggest part of the district are acre properties. So if you recall the days, for those of us who have older kids, of trick-or-treating, right? Some of the bigger neighborhoods, should you have trick-or-treated with your kids, you could only make so many houses because you only had so much time. And that is such an important thing, regardless of having digital connections with people through websites and Facebook and e-blast and all that. That door-to-door contact, which typically happens during campaign season, whether you're a new candidate or you're going for re-election, is so important, and it is so challenging to do with 4 districts. So sorry to take so long to get to that, But I also, again, I want to end by saying we have studied this and discussed this thoroughly. So to delay further really is, to my feeling, is a delay tactic, is a stall tactic, because you don't want to make a change. So please, I'm imploring you, to consider that this is the will of our constituents. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Valenti? You're muted.
I just want to clarify something that was discussed by Councilman Massaro. If I understand this correctly, if this passes, it's the council that can change at will the number of districts with a 2/3 vote. So that's a 14-7 council. We've had a 14-7 council before. We had a 10-11 in Republican, 10-11 in Democrat, 4-7. I think the other thing that hasn't been discussed is all the new development on Reservoir, potentially the mall, the old Avalon. So again, without the census information, again, we're just doing it because we can. We're not getting the clear facts in front of us. And the more I thought about it, I don't think I could support going back right now.
Okay, any further discussion?
No discussion, Madam Chair, just that the motion is to remove this provision from the charter revision proposal.
Right, the motion, the Councilman Massaro's motion on the floor, just so everyone is clear, he wants to remove the provision that requires 2/3 of the council to change the number of voting districts. Okay? Everyone understands that?
Does that include the language about the boundaries? That's also changed?
Yes, it would leave the current language in place,
Thank you.
which is to establish districts at the time.
Okay. So is our discussion and debate complete? Anyone else? All right, motion on the floor. We've had a second. Councilman Schwartz, I believe, seconded that motion. Roll call vote, please.
Don Cantafio.
No.
Bill Mecca.
No.
Michael Miller.
No.
Donna Sidell. I'll come back to Donna. Mary Isaac.
No.
Tony Cinto.
Yes.
Keith Klein.
No.
Kevin Shively.
No.
Thomas Whitmore.
No.
Thank you. Jason Marsh.
No.
Carl Massaro.
Yes.
Eric Paulson.
No.
Lori Rosasco Schwartz.
Yes.
Joanne Glass Orenstein.
No.
Stephen Lemoyne.
Yes.
Joe Garrix.
No.
Bruce Elstein.
No.
Joey Colon.
No.
Ashley Gaudiano.
No.
And Lisa Valente.
It doesn't matter, so I'm going to abstain.
Very good. Thank you. Motion fails. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to go back to Donna. Donna Sidell?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Motion fails.
Motion fails. Okay. Any further discussion regarding resolution TC 28-89?
Yes, this is Tony.
Yes, Councilman Cinto.
Are we gonna vote on each question before you vote on the resolution?
Through the chair,
Councilman Marsh.
Mr. Councilman Cinto sort of stole my thunder. I was going to propose the three questions that I would ask the council to recommend be put on the ballot. And they are as follows. Question number 1, shall there be a general revision of the charter of the town of Trumbull with respect to revisions other than those referenced in questions number 2 and questions number 3 below? Question number 2, Shall there be a revision of the charter of the town of Trumbull to provide an 8-member Board of Education, not more than 4 members to be from the same political party, with staggered 4-year terms so that the terms of 4 members expire every 2 years? Question 3, shall there be a revision of the charter of the town of Trumbull to provide that the threshold for requiring a referendum on bonding authorization project be adjusted annually by the Consumer Price Index?
Okay,
Need a
Everyone-
second.
I'll second Dawn Cantafio.
thank you. The proposed questions, and just so the public understands, the questions just proposed will be on the ballot for the public to vote yes or no.
Madam Chair, this is Kevin Shively. Just so I understand, is this being proposed as an amendment to the resolution? Is that the way it's being presented?
Yes, Councilman Marsh? Yes.
Believe, and we can check with Attorney Shopik, but I believe this would amend the second be it further resolved clause, correct?
That's correct.
So this would be substituted such that I believe the second resolution would read, be it further resolved that the questions to be placed or to be submitted to the electors of the town of Trumbull for adoption or rejection at the state and federal election scheduled for the 3rd day of November 2020 shall be as follows, and then list the questions as I just recited them.
Thank
Correct.
you very much.
Correct.
Was there a second to the motion?
There
Yes,
was.
Cantafio?
Seconded, Dawn Cantafio seconded.
Mary Beth, this is Tony Cinto. I have a question for Mr. Shopik. Are we voting on each separate question, or are you voting on 3 at once?
3 at once. There's one motion.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't believe I see any hands. So we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Dawn Cantafio,
Yes.
Bill Mecca,
Bill
Bill
just, this is Kevin Shively. Bill just communicated that he's having technical problems now, Bill.
okay,
Within
we'll come back to him. Mike Miller,
Yes.
Donna Sidell,
No.
Mary Isaac,
No.
Yes.
Tony Cinto,
No.
Keith Klein,
No.
Kevin Shively,
Yes.
thank you. Thomas Whitmore,
Yes.
Jason Marsh,
Yes.
Carl Massaro,
Yes.
Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Lori Rosaska Schwartz,
Yes.
Joanne Glasser Orenstein,
Yes.
Steve Moore,
No.
Joe Garrix,
Yes.
Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
Joy Cologne,
Yes.
Ashley Gaudiano,
Yes.
and Lisa Valente.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, and now I need a motion to vote on the resolution as amended.
So moved, Dawn Cantafio.
Tom Whitmire, second.
Thank you.
Shall I call the roll call?
Yes, please.
Dawn Cantafio,
Yes.
Bill Mecca. He's still having trouble. Michael Miller,
Yes.
Donna Sidell. Donna Sidell. We'll come back. Mary Isaac,
Yes.
Tony Cinto,
No.
Keith Klein,
No.
Kevin Shively,
Yes.
Thomas Whitmore,
Yes.
Jason Marsh,
Yes.
Carl Massaro,
No.
Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Lori Zasko Schwartz,
No.
Joanne Glasser Orenstein.
Yes.
I see Donna Siddell.
No,
Thank you,
no,
Donna.
no,
Thank you. Steve Lemoyne,
No.
Joe Garrett,
Yes, yes, yes.
Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
Joy Colon,
Yes.
Ashley Gaudiano,
Yes.
and Lisa Valente.
No.
Is Bill Mecca here?
Yep, I'm here and I vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion carries as amended.
Thank you, Margaret. All right, that concludes resolution 28-9. Councilman Miller, would you please bring resolution TC 28-90 to the floor for us?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Resolution TC 28-90, be it resolved and ordained that Chapter 9, Health and Sanitation, Section 9-3 of the Trumbull Municipal Code, as established by the Town Council, last amended as TC 27-65 on June 4th, 2018, being the same, is hereby repealed and replaced with the ordinance attached hereto. Full ordinance attached.
Cantafio, second.
Thank you very much. Committee report, please.
Certainly. Ms. Bango, Health Department Director, confirmed the repeal and replacement is to comply with state statute. Public Act 19-117 changed the requirements for estheticians, eyelash technicians, and nail technicians in the state. They are now required to be licensed. For that reason, the ordinance needed to be changed to add that language. The changes mirror state statute. Motion carried by unanimous consent.
Okay, thank you very much. Any discussion or debate regarding this resolution?
Through the chair,
Yes.
we do have a public hearing, I believe, on this.
Okay. Then we will open a public hearing at 9:14 p.m. Are there any members from the public who would like to speak to this resolution? Please raise your hand, and I'd ask for Mr. Chin's help. I don't see any hands raised.
I do not either.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Margaret. All right, seeing no comment from the public, we'll close the public hearing at 9:15. Thank you.
You're welcome. Dawn Cantafio,
Yes.
Bill Mecca,
Yes.
Michael Miller,
Yes.
Donna Siddell,
yes,
Mary Isaac,
Yes.
Tony Cinto,
Yes.
Keith Flame,
Yes.
Kevin Shively,
Yes.
Thomas Whitmore,
Yes.
Jason Morris,
Yes.
Carl Massaro,
Yes.
Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Lori Zasko Schwartz,
Yes.
Joanne Glasser Orenstein,
Yes.
Steve Lemoyne,
Yes.
Joe Garrett,
Yes.
Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
Joy Colon,
Yes.
Ashley Gaudiano,
Yes.
and Lisa Valente.
yes,
Passes.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move to make this emergency legislation.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second, Joy Cologne.
Do we need a roll call vote, or can we just call it unanimous?
Unanimous consent is fine.
Unanimous.
Okay,
unanimous,
thank you. Okay, that will be emergency legislation. Councilman Lemoyne, would you please bring resolution TC 28-9 for us? You're on
Steve,
mute.
you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Resolution TC 28-91, be it resolved, the submission of the town of Trumbull State of Connecticut STEEP grant is hereby authorized in the amount of not to exceed $1 million for the construction of the Veterans and First Responders Center on Cats Pond site. And Vicky A. Tesoro, First Selectman, is hereby authorized as the individual authorized to sign the application and all subsequent amendments, reports, and related documents in order to administer and implement the project. Full resolution is attached.
Thank you very much. May I have a second?
Second, Dawn Cantafio.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Kevin Shively. I'll give the committee report.
Thank you.
Ms. Baccalar explained the following. In the past, the grant was capped at $500,000. That's changed. $15 million has been allocated at the state level. It's necessary to gauge what is a competitive proposal. The $1 million gives the town more leeway. The grant will be submitted by August 14th, noting emergency legislation is necessary because the First Selectman needs to be empowered before submittal. The application will be specific for capital construction costs and will cover a percentage across the entire construction budget. It is required that the project be shovel-ready or near shovel-ready. We qualify as near shovel-ready because there is a full concept, a site committed, the Board of Finance and Town Council have dedicated to design funding, and an RFQ has gone out for the architect. The fact that we have a site secured and an architect secured and will be in the design phase makes this a near shovel-ready project. It doesn't mean we will go out for construction bid tomorrow. That would be shovel-ready. The committee that oversees the project is meeting tomorrow for final interviews to select the architect and will immediately go into full design. There had been a detailed conversation with the legislative delegation asking them to support the application. This will be an extremely competitive application because the grants have been on hold for several years, and due to the economic landscape, due to COVID-19, everyone is looking for every dollar. We need the delegation's support and believe the conversation they had was excellent. Ms. Baccalar will follow up on their conversation on August 4th or 5th. The town has already contributed the $200,000 as a match for the grant and has also dedicated more. The property has been committed to the project and that has value, and other items that are in kind also have value. And there's a future dredging project that also has value and is a contribution to the project. The match is not a dedicated amount. It has to show there is skin in the game, and that has been demonstrated. Clerk called the roll call and the motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Any discussion regarding this steep point? I know we have the chairman of the building committee on this evening.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. We did select an architectural firm, and we begin meetings this week to define the scope of the project with the architect. We also, as Rena Baccalar had pointed out before, have scheduled meetings with our legislative delegation, which has already been stated, has been very enthusiastic about their support for this project. So, you know, we're hopeful that we can get this going pretty well, and I think we're on a good track.
Okay, thank you. And for the record, that was Raymond Baldwin, who's the chairman of the building committee for the Trumbull Veterans and First Responders. So, thank you. Any further discussion? Councilman Mchugh?
Yeah.
Councilman Mchugh, you are muted.
I just wanted to say thank you. That this is very exciting that it's moving forward, and fingers crossed with receiving the grant money. I think thinking way down the road, should the project come to fruition, I think we're going to have to address some traffic calming measures on Whitney Avenue because some of those issues exist at certain times of day. So I know a constituent very excited about the prospect of that property being revitalized. But also mentioned it is difficult for me to cross Whitney Avenue with my dogs to go to Indian Ledge Park. So just putting that out there. So with fingers crossed again that the project receives its funding and things are factored in as it moves along. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Councilman Massaro.
thank you. No doubt on the resolution, support for it. Just a question on the selection of the architect. If this is a building committee, doesn't the council have to approve architect selection? I don't think we have yet.
Yeah, well, once, Carl, yes, you do. But once we have to first define the scope of the project with the selection, and then we're going to come before the council for the approval. Yeah, we're aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'd like a roll call vote, please.
John Cantafio,
Yes.
Bill Mecca,
Yes.
Michael Miller,
Yes.
Donna Sedell,
Yes.
Mary Isaac,
Yes.
Tony Sinto,
Yes.
Keith Klein,
Yes.
Kevin Shively,
Yes.
Thomas Whitmore,
Yes.
Jason Marsh,
Yes.
Carl Massaro,
Yes.
Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Lori Wasowska Schwartz,
Yes.
Joanne Glasser Ornstein,
Yes.
Steve Lemoyne,
Yes.
Joe Garrix,
Yes.
Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
Joy Cologne,
Yes.
Ashley Gaudiano,
Yes.
and Lisa Valente.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you very much.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to make this emergency legislation.
Deakin, Joanne Glasser Ornstein.
May we assume a unanimous vote for emergency legislation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Unanimous vote passes with the emergency legislation. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Schwartz, would you please bring resolution 28-92 to the floor for us?
I'm sorry, Chairwoman, you asked for me to do that? I was cutting out. I wasn't sure if it was me or not.
I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you. Resolution TC 28-92. Be it resolved that Bloom Shapiro is hereby appointed as the independent auditor for fiscal year 2019 to 2020.
Second, Dawn Cantafio.
Thank you. Committee report, please.
Yes, this is Kevin Shively again. Ms. Pires explained this is for the annual audit required by the state, that the town be audited by an independent auditor every year. They went out to bid and had only one bidder, Bloom Shapiro. The intent is to go out to bid in January for the next year. The reason the other bidders didn't bid was because they either couldn't meet the deadline or they are not in the municipal business anymore. Attorney Chopik clarified this resolution is for the audit that needs to start now. The bid in January would be for the next year's 2021 audit. Ms. Pires stated because they didn't get many bids for the fiscal year 2020, they thought they should go out to bid earlier for fiscal year 2021 to give other bidders the chance to bid. This year's results may have been impacted by COVID. And the clerk called the roll and the motion carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll call to a vote. Please have a roll call vote, or do we need, because it's unanimous for this?
Unanimous.
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 Unanimous, thank you. Does this need to be emergency legislation?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Second, Bruce Elstein.
Okay, and we'll assume that that's also a unanimous vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Councilman Cologne, would you please bring resolution TC 28-93 to the floor for us?
Yes, through the chair. Resolution TC 28-93. Be it resolved and ordained that in accordance with section 9-169 of the general statutes of the state of Connecticut, chapter 6, section 6-1, of the Trumbull Town Code is hereby amended by redividing the town of Trumbull into 7 voting districts. Said districts shall be divided in accordance with the metes and bounds description attached hereto. Said revised voting districts shall be effective commencing with the town election in November 2021.
Thank you. May I have a second? Councilman
Second.
O? Go ahead. Okay, committee report, please.
Through the chair, moved by Gaudiano, second by Colon to pass without recommendation. Vote motion carried by unanimous consent.
Okay, thank you very much. It's passed without recommendation. We'll go on to the discussion.
Madam Chair, I think you have a public hearing scheduled for this.
We'll go through that first. Okay. So we'll commence a public hearing on this resolution at 9:28 p.m. Anyone from the public who'd like to speak, please raise your hand, and I'm sure Mr. Chin will. No, no public, no public.
Madam Chairman, I would like to speak to this if I can.
All right, sure, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. On the topic of the work of the redistricting committee, I want to begin by thanking all of the members of the committee. Thank you to the chairman of the committee, Laura Anderson. Thank you to all the citizen volunteers for their time, and thanks to those members of the council who took on the added responsibility of being members of this committee. I ran on a platform of a return to 7 voting districts. Prior to being first selectman, I felt that the decision to go to 4 districts was a mistake. As a candidate, I promised to work with the council to correct that mistake. The 2020 redistricting committee was charged by this town council to develop a redistricting plan comprising districts of substantially equal population. The committee unanimously agreed to recommend 7 voting districts to satisfy the charge of the council. This plan, just as the current 4-district plan, has as few split districts as possible and complies with the 1-person, 1-vote Connecticut state statute. However, that is where the similarities end. The 7-district plan provides for the following. It restores 7 districts and 7 polling places, making voting easier and lines shorter. Excuse me one sec. Sorry. It restores equal population between all the districts with equal representation. There is no need for a super district. It enhances the neighborhood concept and strengthens the representative constituent relationships. It maintains a strong minority representation in the town council. Supermajorities are bad for our community. Supermajorities foster partisanship instead of compromise. Under the 7-district plan, the party that is in the minority would hold a minimum of 7 seats, while the majority party could hold a maximum of 14 seats. The present 4-district plan lessens the impact of dissenting voices. With a strong minority under the 7-district plan, dissenting points of view will be heard that can influence the outcome of decisions. This benefits the citizens of Trumbull. The 7-district configuration, which was in place before the change to 4 districts, served our town for nearly 3 decades. During that time, Trumbull had both Democratic and Republican first selectmen, both Democratic and Republican majorities in our town council, and both Democratic, Republican, and unaffiliated voters run in our town elections. These facts clearly show that Trumbull voters do their homework, had choice available to them, and that the 7 districts provided the voters with ample opportunity to make change when they felt change was needed. The change to 7 districts will not affect the election this November. It will affect the next municipal election in 2021. If changes are needed to the boundary descriptions due to the 2020 census data and other possible state issues, there is ample time to make the necessary adjustments to comply with state law. If the council accepts the final plan of the redistricting committee, the now majority Democrats are willingly giving up 2 seats on this council. That is in the best interest of the community, and that is why it should be done. I fully support returning to 7 voting districts, as this is the right plan for the people of Trumbull. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First Selectman Tesoro. Mr. Chin, is there anyone else raising their hand from the public who would like to speak to this? I can't see anyone raising their hand.
There doesn't appear to be anybody wishing to speak.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll call the public hearing to a close at 9:33 p.m., please. And no discussion, debate, comments.
Madam Chair, Lori Schwartz, I'd like to have some discussion. I have the minority report of the 2020 Trumbull Redistricting Committee that I would like to read into the record. There are attachments to this that, in the interest of time, I will not read, but I would like submitted in the formal record. All the council members were given a copy of this minority report, so I'll start. Background. On February 3rd, 2020, the Town Council established a 2020 Redistricting Committee for the sole purpose of establishing 7 municipal voting districts. The committee was to comprise 5 members: the Democrat and Republican registrars of voters, a Democrat and Republican member of the Town Council, and a 5th elector of the town. The committee membership was comprised of the Democrat Registrar of Voters and a Democrat Town Committee Chairman, Tom Kelly, Democrat Town Council member, Kevin Shively, former Democrat Registrar of Voters and Democrat Town Committee member, Laurel Anderson, and Republican Town Council member, Tony Cinto. The Republican Registrar of Voters, William Holdland, declined appointment for several reasons which this report addresses. His letter is attached as an Exhibit A to this report, which again I will not read. His vacant seat was not filled. Along party lines, a 7-district plan was approved on May 23rd, 2020, and subsequently incorporated into the committee's final report dated June 26, 2020, and recommended to the Town Council for consideration. Discussion. The Republican Party opposed the creation of the Redistricting Committee for one basic reason: because drawing of municipal voting district lines is largely based on the population measured by the United States Census. Redrawing lines should not have commenced until the 2020 U.S. Census is completed. This would allow for the most accurate data to populate municipal voting districts, no matter the number. Since the 2010 census data is outdated, its use most likely makes any redistricting out of compliance with state and federal law. The proposed districts, if approved, will have to be re-examined and likely redrawn when the 2020 census is released in the spring of 2021. Using 10-year-old data gives reason to believe that the allocation of population to each of the 7 proposed districts is inconsistent with the actual population in 2020 when one considers a 10-year period of ownership, transfers, and residential construction and redevelopment. With the flawed use of the 2010 census data, the proposed municipal voting districts have a large variance of population among them. The committee used a population total of 36,018 people, which should have an average population of 5,145.4 people per district. No proposed district has that average number. 3 proposed districts have less and 4 proposed districts have more. The spread of 99 from the largest to the smallest district populations creates unequal districts. Town council elections are notoriously close, with single-digit pluralities in almost every district in each election. The large spread and number of variations in population among the 7 proposed districts calls into question their validity. The Democrats have posited that voter turnout has fallen since the change to 4 municipal voting districts in 2012. They cite driving distances and crowded polling places. Conveniently, election years with lower voter turnouts under the 7-district systems were ignored. The #1 factor in voter turnout is voter enthusiasm for candidates and issues. Weather can be another factor. Driving distances appear to have been ignored in the proposed plan when one considers residents near the Peconic River downtown will be driving to Madison Middle School to vote. In any event, the redistricting committee failed to consider polling place locations and potential conditions thereat. The proposed 7 district has no school, no town facility, and no identifiable poll location. In addition, no consideration was given to cost and staffing for adding 3 new polling places. The 4 districts currently enacted were created to closely conform to the guidelines of CGS 9-169, which prefer municipal voting district lines match state assembly, state senate, and congressional district lines. All of Trumbull lies within the 22nd senatorial district and the 4 congressional districts, so no boundary line issues are presented. But under the prior 7 district design, there existed 2 split state assembly districts, the 122nd and the 134th. The 4 district design enacted in 2011 eliminated the split of the 134th district. The small portion of the 122nd district in the Nichols section of Trumbull contains population too small to eliminate the splitting of a portion of District 2 in any district design of 4 or 7. Additionally, the 4 district design provides voters in each district the opportunity to elect more council members from a larger pool of candidates, more choice to the voter. The 7 district design offered by the 2020 Redistricting Committee assures political parties their choice of candidates will be elected, with voters getting a limited choice of 3 of 4 candidates. Conclusion. The move to return to 7 municipal voting districts is politically motivated. In the effort to make a campaign promise come true, the Democrats have sought to reestablish the 7 districts by mandating it in the town charter, if not by town council ordinance. The charter effort has failed because it contravenes the mandates of CGS 9-169 for the town council to establish municipal voting districts. There is a long history of Democrat support for dividing the town into 7 municipal voting districts, beginning in 1983 charter revision, which shifted the town from 4 or 5 districts to 7. Voting council membership through 7 districts has led to town council majorities for the Democrat through most of the 29 7-district elections since 1983. No wonder the hasten return to 7 districts now. Please see the appended minutes from the 1983 Town Council and Redistricting Committee meetings, which is Exhibit B. Again, I will not read, but would like submitted to the record. Above politics, council actions should be guided by the rule of law, properly applied to reliable data. As described above, the population from data from 2010 is unreliable for use in design of any number of voting districts. Town Council Republicans will not support the proposed 7-district design. Regardless of political posture, redistricting of the town's municipal voting district should await the results of the 2020 census to ensure compliance with the rule of law, voter integrity, and fairness to our citizens. Tony Cinto, Republican Town Council, minority member of the 2020 Trumbull Redistricting Committee. Thank you.
Any further discussion or debate?
Yes, Mary Beth, this is Tony Cinto. I want to correct a few things that were incorrect tonight. First of all, I voted against the proposed map of 7 districts when we voted for that. I did vote yes to send the paperwork and all the work that was done by the committee to the town council. That was the correct answer. So I voted against the map, and I voted to send the paperwork that everybody was working on to the town council. I thought that was the correct thing to do, even though I didn't agree with it, because this is the vote that counts. Secondly, one of the speakers earlier tonight said that the town population has shifted dramatically from 1983 until now. That is not true. Maybe by 2,000 or 3,000 people, maybe at the most. Someone said it went from 16 to 34,000. That's incorrect. So there's a lot of things that were said that were incorrect. So those are the three things that I needed to correct that I overheard from all the conversations tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Cinto.
Madam Chair,
Councilman Shively.
thank you. Just as a point of clarity, because I want to make sure that we get this completely accurately, having been on the committee with Mr. Cinto and being a part of the vote that we took, I think that the original report said that the choice of 7 districts as the best of the choices available to the committee was voted on unanimously, and that is in fact correct. We did have a full discussion about, based on the charge that the committee was given, what options we had. We looked at dividing up equally into 7 districts, 3 districts, and 1 district. We all agreed that those were really basically our only options, and we all unanimously agreed that 7 districts was the one that was the best choice that was presented to the committee based on our charge.
All right, thank you, Councilman Shively. Councilman Whitmoyer, you're muted.
Hi there. I just wanted to say, I think in previous discussion, we heard that the charge to for this committee to consider polling places was never brought forth to begin with. So, Tony, with all due respect, the redistricting committee failed to consider polling places, locations, and potential.
Tom, I brought it up 15 times. Okay, multiple times I brought it up because I know what happened the last time. It was brought up a bunch of times, but it wasn't addressed because the charge from the town council, and I think Lauren's on the call tonight. I'm not 100% sure, and she will tell you, even though I brought it up and we talked about it, and Kevin will back me up on that, that wasn't a charge. I thought it was important to bring it up, but it was never addressed completely.
Okay,
so,
that's correct.
The register of voters, who are Tom Kelly, I believe, if I'm incorrect, let me know, and Mr. Holden will have to go and try to find 3 more, well, at least 1 polling place. In my opinion, and this is just, write this down, District 7, the polling place will be out of the district. That's my opinion, and we'll see what happens. They'll prove me wrong, but we'll see what happens. Because I brought this up, I know Mr. Holden went through trying to find the last ones, and that's what happened. So, thanks.
So, Madam Chair,
Madam
Chair, that is true. That it was brought up, and every time that was brought up, we all discussed the fact that we did not. Not only did we not, it was not part of our charge. We simply could not consider polling places. We could not. It was not a possibility for this committee under the charge that it was given by the town council. It's very, very clear. And I think Laurel is on the call and she can address that if she.
I'd like Councilman Jerks has something to say.
Yes, through the chair, I just want to take a moment to recognize Regina Haley, Julia McNamee, and all the other members of their group who put in the time and effort to try to bring this before the council years ago. I believe this is too late coming forward, but I'm proud to know that we have citizens in Trumbull who are so concerned with making it easy for our community to vote. So I just wanted to take a moment to publicly thank them for that.
Thank you, Councilman Jerks. Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'd like excuse me, Councilman Steen.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple things that why I won't be supporting this tonight for the time being is that having read all the minutes and watched all the meetings, one of the things to me that's been missing from this is any compelling reason to do it now. I think in light of the budget meeting that we had not that long ago where we were told there was no money for anything, spending any money on this, I think is a bit of a slap in the face to the parents who are now working to get their kids back into school. We just heard the acting superintendent say he was at some meeting where a conference where another school was talking about adding food service people, and we're not even sure we're going to be able to serve lunch. And we actually cut the budget for the Board of Ed, and we don't know how much money we're going to be able to have to spend towards that. So doing this now, there's been really no case been made to do that. So I can't support it now for that reason. I also think that the data that I've seen presented on this, again, hasn't really swayed either direction for this. I think the last point I'd like to make is that, you know, seeing as how we voted tonight to make this a 2/3 majority vote for all future changes, frankly, the only reason we're doing this right now is because there's a supermajority and doesn't require a 2/3 vote. So I think a lack of any really compelling reason to do this now, there's no reason whatsoever why we can't wait. And if we feel so strongly about, and I would, you know, take a moment to quote the charter revision chairwoman, where she said, you know, the support should be expressed not by a bare majority, but with a vote of not less than 2/3. This will represent the vast majority of voters, and in most cases require bipartisan support. And yes, I do recognize, you know, as Councilman Marsh pointed out earlier, we're going to play it as we lie right now, which I think, you know, kind of proves the point that doesn't matter who's in the supermajority, you can't count on, you know, good behavior from either party. But if we're feel so strongly about a 2/3 majority to make future changes, there's no reason why we can't wait to do this. And there's actually really no financial compelling reason to do this now either. So I just wanted to say that that's why I'm not going to be supporting this tonight.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize. Laurel Anderson is on this call. Did you want to speak? I didn't have you on my screen.
Sure. Hi, Mary Beth. Yes. Good evening, everyone. Laurel Anderson, 5241 Main Street. I served as chairman of the committee. So just a couple of points. The vote that was made at our final meeting was not just to forward documentation to the council. It was indeed a full vote, unanimous vote by the committee to endorse the 7 districts, to endorse the border, the boundary that we came up with. It also reviewed the split between the districts. And I notice in Tony's report that you go from having an average to then saying that there's 99. So if you use the average of voters per district, it is not off ever more than 50 voters, which is then under a 1% difference per district. So I think the 1 person, 1 vote rule absolutely stands up when you're talking about a lower than 1% change. On a point of personal privilege, as a former registrar, I was certainly receiving many, many phone calls from electors in Trumbull who had pretty long waits, up to 45 minutes wait to stand in line to vote. That had never happened in Trumbull before. If there's any urgency at all, I would say that to reduce, you know, the waiting time, to encourage people to vote should be the charge of all elected officials in Trumbull. That sure, we would like all of us, I'm sure, to have budget challenges at this point, but, or not to have them rather, but I think there is a component about going back to allowing people to vote in person if they wish to. My husband has not been able to vote in person in 4 election cycles. Because of his job, he cannot wait at Middlebrook to get in to vote, and he doesn't know when he's going to return to Trumbull in the evening. So he's just one example of, because of the lines, and especially in the larger district. Other people are running into the same issues with parking. Hopefully there won't be an issue with teachers being trained on the same day as elections in the same polling places. But But also, final point, to the situation to do with polling places, that is the complete and total purview of the registrars of voters. We as a committee did discuss that we hoped the registrar of voters would take into account the driving, the travel distances, because it has been shown that the voter turnout declines exponentially the further away from polling places the voters are. So we had hoped the registrars of voters would take that into account when they determine where the polling places should be. We could not only was it not in our charge as a committee, but since we have no idea at all where the registrar of voters may decide to put those polling places, it was really not a discussion we could have and use that in our discussions of the borders. So thank you very much for letting me speak, Mary Beth.
Thank you, and I appreciate all of that. Councilman Massaro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may ask through the chair, Ms. Anderson, Mrs. Anderson, a couple of questions. My first question is about the current District 4 and splitting that into two, the new proposed District 4 and District 5. How were you able to lay out all the other districts when you knew what the population of the current District 4 was? Can you describe how the committee was able to get substantially similar numbers by not creating a split district in the 134th, but creating two 134th voting districts?
Richard White worked on the census tract. He had the population within the census tracts and was able to do a configuration that we reviewed.
And those census tracts were from 2010?
Correct.
Did he use the map that he had created back in 2012 as a starting point?
I don't know that for sure, but it has been modified from that.
Well, if you say it was modified from that, then maybe he did use it and modified off of that.
I honestly can't speak to that one way or the other, Mr. Massaro. I don't know technically what his process was. And I don't think he's on. I didn't see him anyway.
Yeah, I don't think he's with us tonight.
I don't think he's with us.
I'm gonna ask him.
I didn't see him. But I quite honestly don't have any idea of his process. His work, by the way, was double checked by Steve Early, who's in the engineering department of the town of Trumbull. So we did have someone else with some technical expertise reviewing Steve's work. I mean, Richard's work.
So can you tell us, was it strictly the census blocks from 2010 that were used to create this new 7-district design, or did you take into account known population changes in given census blocks?
We could not take that into account. We, in fact, had Mr. Shopik join us, and we also had a kind of a tutorial from Richard, and we were not allowed to use any data other than the 2010 census in our deliberations.
So the fact there's new apartments that are being occupied over on Oakview, those new residents there, that was commercial space that's not been taken into consideration for District 7?
Correct, it could not be.
Well, if you're changing districts today, and I understand for 2020 it's not going to matter because we're not voting on municipal offices. So you get away with not having an accurate count in any of these 7 districts. Thank you for your responses.
Please keep in mind also, sir, that we needed to use the actual population numbers, not the voted, not the registered voters, not the numbers of registered voters.
If I said registered voters, I didn't mean that. I meant population. So
Yeah.
in your census blocks, that's population, it's not registered voters. I know there was a map done in 2012 that color coded the census blocks based on voter registration. And I know in your remarks to the council earlier, last month, I should say, you said none of that was taken into consideration.
No.
So take your word for that. But thank you for your remarks. My only other point that I would make tonight is, something that some folks have emailed in, some folks have spoken about, and that's about people getting a greater voice. And when you have fewer districts and you have a bigger pool of candidates and you elect more people, you have a bigger voice, in my opinion. The town of Trumbull population density varies. Virtually every square mile or every couple of square miles, you're going to have driving distances no matter how many districts you have. For instance, in the one that you've proposed, District 6 is going to stretch from the eastern border, all the way down to Trumbull Town Center, which it never did before. So you're going to have some driving distance to whatever polling places you end up finding. And I know that your charge was not to discuss or factor in polling places, but in my opinion, conditions at polling places, rather than the number of polling places, is more important to efficient voting than anything else. And I find it curious. You can put statistics and make them work for you any way you want. But I found it personally curious that in 2017, I think it was, when we were electing a new first selectman with 3 candidates, we had one of the lowest voter turnouts in a long time. That can't be explained by polling close locations, driving distances. It's called voter enthusiasm.
Councilman Marsh.
I would just remark that in 2017, the voters were pretty enthusiastic for Vicky Tesoro. So, I mean,
Not in terms of turnout.
Okay, any further debate? We'll call this to a vote. We need a roll call vote, please.
Tom Cantafio,
Yes.
Bill Mecca,
That's happened before. Yes.
Michael Miller,
Yes.
Donna Siddell,
Come on.
We'll come back. Mary Isaac,
Yes.
Tony Sinto,
No.
Keith Klein,
No.
Kevin Shively,
For the big reasons I'm here today, yes.
Thomas Whitmore,
Yes.
Jason Marsh,
yes.
Carl Massaro,
No.
Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Lori Zatzko Schwartz,
No.
Joanne Glasser Orenstein,
Yes.
Steve Lemoyne,
No.
Joe Garrix,
Yes.
Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
Joy Cologne,
Yes.
Ashley Gaudiano,
Yes.
Lisa Valente,
No.
and Donna Siddell. Are you here now?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Motion carries.
Thank you. Councilman Mecca, can you please bring resolution TC 28-94 to the floor for us?
Yes, Madam Chair. Resolution TC 28-94. Be it resolved that the Town of Trumbull retirement plan is hereby amended. Full resolution attached.
Thank you. May I have a second, please?
Second, Dawn Cantafio.
Thank you. Committee report, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Kevin Shively. Mr. Jim Lavin, Chairman of the Pension Board, explained it was brought to the board's attention this year of an unfair and inconsistent practice. A town employee passed away while in service. The employee had more than 5 years of service, but less than 10. The benefit the plan called for only allowed the beneficiary to receive the insurance payment of $25,000 plus return of his contributions plus interest. This was inconsistent with the practice of other employees who get a prorated benefit based on their years of service between 5 and 10 years. The board discussed this at their June meeting and were convinced it was an inconsistent practice and thought in terms of fairness, the employee was working for the town in an interval of 5 to 10 years should be treated the same. The board passed this resolution unanimously. The amendment is retroactive to July 1st, 2019, would affect the person who passed away. The board, in fairness, wants to cover this individual. The resolution is very narrow and doesn't expect a lot of issues with it, but does wish to be consistent with Article 9 and how to treat deferred vesting. This is a housekeeping amendment that was triggered by this employee's death. Ms. Pires confirmed the employee was a union employee. This individual passed away several years ago, but was not eligible because of their age. Now the spouse is eligible to start collecting the pension. This is why they realized this wasn't consistent with other employees. It was an unequitable way of treating someone who passed away on the job and will make it consistent with how they handle other retirees. This would not change the contract. The employee passed away more than 5 years ago. The employee was partially vested at the time of the passing. The beneficiary couldn't collect on the pension because the employee wasn't 62 when he passed. He would have been 62 in January of this year, therefore his beneficiary is now eligible. The current policy is if someone passes away and is not fully vested, the beneficiary would only get the $25,000 life insurance and contributions plus interest as one lump sum and would not have the option to take the 10-year benefits. The change will allow the beneficiary to receive a monthly pension for the next 10 years, but not the $25,000. The chair explained on other situations there is a choice available, and in this case, the choice wasn't offered and is now making the choice available. Ms. Pires confirmed if an employee passed away at the age of 52, this would benefit the employee because the person would have been partially vested. The new plan would allow the option described in the above paragraph. Either way, they would have to wait the 10 years until they would have been 62. The chair added that the pension board did pass this unanimously. Ms. Pires stated they brought this to their actuary and it was determined it would not be a material impact to the pension plan. It would be an impact of approximately $2,000 per year. They don't believe there are a lot of individuals in this category because the plan has been closed. There would be a handful of people. Ms. Pires could get more accurate data on that for the full town council meeting. The chair clarified this plan is no longer offered to new employees. Ms. Pires explained that they have interpreted the plan to allow for the option. It is just that the plan is not as clear as they believed it to be or should be. The chair stated this would align to what the plan had been assumed to be. The clerk called the roll and the motion carried 4-0 to 1 with 1 abstention, Mr. Cinto.
Thank you for that report. Discussion, debate regarding this resolution. All right, seeing none, we'll call it to a vote. It looks unanimous to me. Is it unanimous all right with everybody here?
Yes.
Yes.
No, Mary Beth.
No, it is not. All right, will you need a roll call vote, please?
John Cantafio,
Yes.
Bill Mecca,
Yes.
Michael Miller,
Yes.
Donna Sidell,
Yes.
Mary Isaac,
Yes.
Tony Cinto,
No.
Keith Plain,
Yes.
Kevin Shively,
Yes.
Thomas Whitmore,
Yes.
Jason Marsh,
Yes.
Carl Massaro, Carl,
No?
no, thank you. Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Lori Rozasco Schwartz,
No.
Joanne Glasser Orenstein,
Yes.
Steve Lemoyne,
No.
Joe Garrix,
Yes.
Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
Joy Colon,
Yes.
Ashley Gaudiano,
Yes.
and Lisa Valente.
Yes.
Motion carried. I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make this emergency legislation.
Thank you, Councilman Cantafio. May I have a second?
Second.
Second, Joy Cologne.
Thank you. May we call this a unanimous consent for emergency legislation or no?
No.
No.
This is Tony.
Roll call vote.
John Cantafio,
Yes.
Bill Mecca. I can't hear Bill.
Yeah, sorry.
Michael Miller,
Yes.
Donna Sedell,
Yes.
Mary Isaac,
Yes.
Tony Sinto,
No.
Keith Klein,
Yes.
Kevin Shively,
Yes.
Thomas Whitmore,
Yes.
Jason Marsh,
Yes.
Carl Massaro,
No.
Eric Paulson,
Yes.
Larry Vizasco Schwartz,
No.
Joanne Glosser Orenstein,
Yes.
Stephen Lemoyne,
No.
Joe Garrix,
Yes.
Bruce Elstein, Bruce Elstein,
Yes.
thank you. Joy Cologne,
Yes.
Ashley Gaudiano,
Yes.
and Lisa Valente.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. With that, our resolutions have concluded. Thank you, everyone, for your participation this evening. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, John Cantafio.
Seconded, Bill Mecca.
Thank you very much. Unanimous consent. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.